Mr. Libby's juice, the topic of many conversations. Grosses out many. Some think it's interesting. Some kids even want me to add onion to it today. So I'm going to try that. This is a little information about Mr. Libby's juice. One piece of random information I wanted to share with you is the chef's hat. The chef's hat means several things. Now this one's a Green Bay Packer hat because I love the Green Bay Packers. But in a traditional high-end restaurant setting, the taller the chef's hat is and the more white it is, the more important that person is. Also, something interesting is if you see these pleats that are on a chef's hat, each of those pleats is supposed to represent, in the old days, how many different ways you could cook an egg. This hat happens to have 27 pleats on it, so I'm going to have to try to figure out 27 different ways to cook an egg. Otherwise, I'm going to have to get rid of it. In addition to the 27 pleats that are on this particular hat, I neglected to mention that the goal, like the Top Chef, would have 100 of them, which I think that's pretty incredible. Also, you'll notice that I'm wearing my very scientific cooking glasses with tape. I was going to change it and fix it, but the tape has remained for weeks, so I think it's worthy. All right. Okay, the first thing we've got to do is put the machine together. So I didn't know if any of you guys had a juicer at your house or if you've used one before, but basically what you do is you have this main body, which is the engine. This spins at a very, very high speed. And what happens is inside of this little grate, there are tiny little teeth that tear the vegetables or whatever item you're putting in there. It tears them apart and shreds it into tiny little pieces. That gets thrown to the outside of the mesh. That mesh then leaks down into your receiver. This receiver collects it, and you'll notice later that the juice comes dripping right out of there. So what you're really doing is you're separating the bulk of the food, the fiber of it, and you're taking only the nutrients and minerals and vitamins that are in the vegetable. You are losing fiber, so in some other part of your diet, you need plenty of fiber. Okay, let's put it together. So the first thing we do is we set this on here. We put the blades on. Blades pop in like that. We have a catcher that catches all the stuff that when we're done, I'll show you that. And that takes a moment or two to clean. And then the top goes on. And once the top is on, these come up, these slats come up, and you'll notice that it wiggles a little bit to push down. When you do that, that means there's a little sensor in there that wouldn't let it turn on if that wasn't locked. So it couldn't spin like crazy and hurt somebody. Okay? All right, so that's the juicer ready to go. Now, we're going to show you what we do to start. So a few things I do to put flavor in it, because it is super, super healthy, but it is very much carrot and celery water with other things in it. So I always start with just a tiny dash of Worcestershire sauce. And Worcestershire sauce is very potent. It has things in it such as anchovies and garlic and onion, but it adds a nice little background flavor to the juice, so it's not just watery. I put a tiny bit of soy sauce in there as well. Soy sauce has, it's cooked down from soybeans, so it has a real rounded umami flavor that adds something nice to the regular vegetables. I like paprika, which is, red peppers that have been dried and then pulverized. That adds a nice little earthy flavor to it as well. And then I happen to be a spice guy, so I always put a couple dashes of Tabasco in there just to make sure that when I take a sip of it, it hurts just a tiny bit. Our carrots, our celery, we have Italian parsley, and then we have cilantro, which is Chinese parsley. I use that because it's got a lot more of it's sort of an Asian flavoring that I really enjoy. And the Italian parsley adds a lot of freshness to it. So it doesn't taste so bland. And this is tomatoes from concentrate. If you juice a tomato, it's like tomato water. It doesn't taste like anything. So that's why I add that in there. Okay, so let's get started cleaning up. So we're gonna peel peel the carrots. Okay, so we've peeled our carrots. Whenever you peel your carrots, you don't even really need to rinse them off in the sink if you don't feel like it, because you're pulling off that whole surface layer. I usually do anyways, just in case. So then once they're peeled, I just go ahead and cut off the tops, those little tops. Anything that you don't clean off of your vegetables, including the bottom of your your celery, sorry. Any of that stuff that you don't cut off, it can leave a bitterness. I used to juice the carrots. I would just wash them in the sink and then juice them the way they were. But it ended up having sort of a bitterness from that exterior skin that grew in that ground all that time. And I just didn't care for that. Everything has to fit into this little slot at the top. You can see here, these carrots are of a size where they're going to go in okay. Celery is sort of shaped like the slot, so that works out all right. Things like this beet, I end up having to cut the beets down to a shape that will allow for them to go into the machine. And it looks like that's we'll have to cut that again. So we just have to make sure that our veggies are in a shape that'll fit down in the machine. And I also do it sort of in an order. The celery has a lot of water content. So when I put something down there like a little piece of garlic or the ginger or the greens that don't have a lot of liquid in them, I then follow it with celery that helps flush through. So as I juice, you'll be able to see that. And you're not going to be able to hear me anymore until we're done, because this thing's pretty loud. All right, let's try it.
Watch these beets. Got red, it comes out right away. There's a lot of moisture in those beets. Those are really good for you. Fold up some greens. I usually hide the garlic in the greens. Top it off with a lemon. This will add some liquid. That smells really garlicky, lemony. That's all ginger juice. So now we'll rinse with some celery. Here goes the onion. Smells a little bit like an armpit.
So that's how it works, and we're gonna taste test this in a minute. But I gotta be honest. The onion, when it went through, smelled a bit like a bad armpit, so I'm not so sure. Okay, cut that. Okay, so we're done juicing, and as you can see, my guesstimate was pretty good. So this, we have to juice into this cup because this one's too tall; it wouldn't go in it. Okay, and then I pour all that vegetable, frothy, dark, red, gooey stuff in there. And then we add our little V8 just to top it off. That gives me that sort of, you know how tomato juice is just a little bit sweet. And I just add that in there and fill it to the top. And then we got our magic lid that works most of the time. I've only spilled a few times. Usually when I forget to close the lid when I'm shaking it. I shake it all the time because otherwise the spicy garlic stuff goes to the bottom. Yep. And this is what I do all day long at school. So now it's time for the taste test. Hey, Cad! Cad, you want to taste this?
What is it?
It's one of my juices. I just did it and I added onion. You try it first.
Oh, okay.
All right, I already shook it up.
Okay. Cheers. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
And that's how I juice every morning before I come to work. Thanks, guys. Miss you.
You should make some at your house. It's amazing.